So here we go. We're going to recap just some cherry-picked things because appropriate.
Alright.
So, on this rainy Saturday here, got to thinking about a neat story called Beware the King, Beware the Fool. Okay, it goes something like this. So, there was a good king in ancient times, and he had 12 sons. He had a set of triplets. He had 2 sets of twins. Okay? And the others were all of single births. But he had 12 sons. And when they were military age, his kingdom was challenged. And it was challenged from 3 sides. First from the north, the very hostile north, and then from the east, and then from the south. And he committed to battle to preserve his lands. And it looked something like this arrangement. Okay. He had his kingdom here. These were also his lands. To the west, he had 3 distinct states, which he had in reserve for his 3 oldest sons. Now, during the course of this war, though, in defending his lands from the hostile north, the opportunistic east and south, his sons succumbed to battle, and he lost 9 of them. He did win the war, but at the cost of 9 of his sons and much of his population. It was a victory, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. He called extensively for help from an ally of his, just to the west, who was quite prosperous and whose prosperity owed much to this good king. This ally, immediately to the west, had 3 vassal states, which were not as prosperous as the good king's lands, but he enjoyed his security because he was basically inaccessible without going through the good king's land. He knew that he was in a good position, and he had no worries as long as the good king kept up the fight. And he did not help him, even though he had pledged to. While these lands were in a state of disrepair and people were recovering from the war, yet still hostile one with another, the word spread throughout the land to the westward that the good king's heart had failed him. In retreat from the hostile borderlands and in apparent abandonment of the main country, the 3 remaining sons decided each to take up one of these bordering states closer to the protection of their ally. And they were invited by the king over here in blue to come closer, and he would give them each a daughter of his to marry. But he supposed that these 3 remaining sons, being the youngest, were pressed into service and did not have much training to be kings because they were the youngest. And so these 3 youngest sons, all of their affairs were run by this king's daughters. And he turned them into vassal states, and they controlled somewhat of this country of their fathers, but not securely. And they requested help from the king, and he did not help them, but he did request and got much of their resources, and he kept them producing for him. And this king very much enjoyed the subjugation of others, and he enjoyed seeing people in a state of humiliation. And there came a time when a fool staggered into town and was just hilarious in his display and his mannerisms, and how he could witfully stitch together jokes and matters of other hilarity that people just were struck by. And so this fool one day was out and had a crowd about him, and the king came by to see him, and he was in rags and tatters, and he noticed that this fool was just hilarious, and he made the king laugh. And the king told him he must come to his court, and he must be his entertainment between the droll murmurings of the people asking for this and for that and for things that he did not want to provide, but yet he had to tolerate them because they were his subjects, and he recognized that they did offer means of support, however meager from one to the next. In total, it was a fair living. And so he brought the fool with him, and the fool was obliged to go. The fool began to call him master. And the fool increased in popularity in his court and gained notoriety for his boldness in addressing members of the court and chiding them and goading them, but making it just so undeniably hilarious that he was given a pass to do it. And he got bolder and bolder and bolder. And he also got to the point where he would goose the king every once in a while. And the king didn't like that at first, but he found that it was pretty enjoyable, actually, to just get caught off guard and to laugh himself sick at this stupid fool. One day, at a time of collection of tributes and taxes, the three sons from these middle areas came in and requested from this king, please support us with military. We're weak, and we have encroachments here that we cannot defend against for much longer. We really need your help. The king looked at them, and he told them to go away and don't trouble him unless the threat was at his door. Meaning they needed to fight until their lands had laid to waste before he would help. And taking the opportunity to seize on the moment and witfully rouse the king again, the fool took up a sword and said, isn't it true, great king, that one can challenge you and in direct combat, if victorious, could actually be the king? And the fool was apparently drunk and staggering and dragging the sword from himself to the floor and dropping it and picking it up again. And the king thought this hilarious. Everyone thought it was hilarious, and they were laughing so hard. And the king said, why, yes, do you want to engage me in direct combat, you fool? And the fool said, yes, of course I do. And he dragged his sword over to the king, and he smacked the garment of the king, and the king was laughing so hard he just couldn't help himself. And the fool said, do you accept this single combat? And the king said, yes, sure, why not? And the fool chopped that king's head off so fast it hit the floor, and everyone was still laughing. And they weren't paying attention. And people started to realize, oh shit, he just cut the king's head off. And the fool stood up straight and held the sword, and he was challenged by the king's guard who approached. And he said, do not come near me, I am the king now. I have by direct single combat defeated this king, and this is now my kingdom by law. The king's guard, the former king, the dead king, their guard looked at each other. They said, that cannot be, that cannot be. This is not the way this is done. This is illegal. This is by some kind of ruse that you have done this. You have lied to get here. And the fool stood up and said, I am a king. And I came in here at invitation by him. And he who would not help me, I am the king of the east. And they said, that's a lie. The king of the east, his heart had failed him when his sons had died in combat. And his kingdom fell into disrepair. You cannot be him, he is dead. And the fool said, not so. It was announced, and word was sent that the king's heart had failed him. But it did not say that he died. And they all looked at each other, and they convened a court immediately and brought in the king's court to try the case, while the fool was still standing there with sword in hand and the dead king on the ground. And the 3 sons took up their swords and went and stood before him and said, you will not harm our father the king, and this is rightfully his kingdom. And there were soldiers who pressed in from the outside to bring in the king's court and their judges. And so there began a standoff between the 3 sons, the fool of the king, and everyone else. And the whole case was heard. And they recounted, did he offer any false representations of his request for single combat? Did he sneak up on the king? Was it murder? No. It was found that he clearly stated that he was going to engage the king in single combat. Clearly stated. And the king accepted knowingly. And he had sword in hand too. So on this, and thereafter, it became known as a word of wisdom. Beware the fool. Beware the king. Because it could not be said and it could not be judged harshly of him that he had wrongfully taken that kingdom. This is the king who had sworn to protect him and to offer support as an ally. And he didn't show up. This king went and took the payment of that which was due him, despite having lost his own country. And the king did go on, took this other king's army, and went back and retook his country too. Then they died for his country. What's the moral of the story, man? Well, sometimes if there's some kind of a fool telling you they're going to do exactly what they're going to do, maybe they're going to fucking do it. Beware the fool. Beware the king.
So,
I was going to read a little bit out of a book by Gordon B. Hinckley called Stand a Little Taller. Okay? And for today, it says, Building the Kingdom. Therefore, now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant. 2 Samuel 2:7. This work requires sacrifice. It requires effort. It requires courage to speak out and faith to try. He's a good friend of mine, you know. Yeah. Okay? Alright. That's it. Love you all. Yeah, so I'm getting a lot of these just regular people that are like, well, we need to do something about this guy. This is fucking America, dude. We have freedom of speech, religion, and self-defense, and the right to keep and bear arms. You may not fuck with that. So I am asserting my freedom of speech, which shall not be abridged, under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Furthermore, I am entitled to any fucking religious belief I may hold that is not harmful to others in an aggressive way, and I am entitled to self-defense in whatever measure is necessary to protect myself as an individual. Get that through your fucking head. Have a good day. Happy Sunday, man. So I'm going to read a quick thing that I've just typed out here, and I thought, well, might as well do a video about it, man. Why not? Get my smiling face on a camera. I hope you're having a good day. So I'm going to read this out to you. If you had a choice between living by betraying the Lord or certain violent death by following the Lord's command, what would you do? I can honestly say I have faced this dilemma and passed on the decision. Now it's just follow through. I'm going all the way, and hell nor high water can stop me. What does that mean? I am going to speak honestly and thoroughly. I'm going to tell the truth as I see it, unashamed. I am going to talk about things that people tend not to live long for discussing. I am going to warn of things I know will surely come. Am I a prophet? No. I am him. Are the books that I've posted meant to be like a scripture? No. These are scribe synopses. They are accurate but very condensed. Scripture is that which gives commands of God unto the people. That is reserved for prophets, and I am not one of those. There are designated and set apart prophets of God on the earth at this time, and they have the necessary keys to operate His church. I'm just a guy in a really bad situation, and I'm making that known in as much detail as I can for documentation purposes. This has to come out, and no one like me has the courage to talk about it, at least not yet openly. I am not concerned about whether you believe me or not. I don't care. I demand my constitutional rights be respected, so do not attempt to tamper with that at all. You will become my enemy. Try to understand me, and I will Try to understand you. Do not misrepresent me. Do not lie about me. Do not judge me. Do not think harm of any kind upon me, my family, or possessions. Doing these things will lead to certain problems for you. So, what do I mean by certain problems for you? Well, cause and effect. That's what I mean. Some people call it karma. Karma favors me for reasons. And those who have served around me know that after a certain point, you can't call it coincidence anymore. Especially not after last night. Have a good Sunday. Have a great week. Love you all. See you later. So this is just a quick follow-up to my last one. It's been, I recorded that all day ago. I've had some time to think about it. And I have to watch those also to make sure that they're not tampered with on the upload, because sometimes they do. They shouldn't be able to now, but sometimes they have. Anyway, I know it's not what a lot of you want to hear. You remember me, and you don't want to hear that. So sometimes just things are the way they are. Fact is stranger than fiction. And I posted this to some friends and on my Facebook feed. This is the happy thought for the day. It's never as dark as it seems. Even at the darkest moment, the light soon cometh. Don't ever forget that. I love you all. Okay, it is 202-404-26. 054356. Arizona time. So, okay, man, we're gonna talk about, okay, if I'm on the Satanic Council, I hold positions 7, 13, and 14. And this is for purposes of audit. Okay, authorized out the wazoo. And so, I'm concluding audit as of yesterday. And we've been working through the night on that. But anyway. So, I have my little doom screen on here. You are entering the refinery. That's where I paused it yesterday. So, this little clip, yeah, I'm gonna upload as a clip and move on to something else. I'm gonna chop it up that way. So, version 2024-04-25, Satanic Council dissolution, of course including definitions from Phase 3 Toolkit. Upon audit, it has been determined the Satanic Council and the corresponding Synagogue of Satan have no constitution or consistency in philorulement, and therefore are materially insolvent. Since the foundation of the apparent capital of the United States and the various other governments have been designed with dependency on the Satanic Order of the Sons of Perdition, These are likewise designated as insolvent. The Sons of Perdition are the capstone or keystone organization legitimizing secret criminal organizations the world over and their overt control of every government, financial institution, and military. The citizenry, each unto its own territorial control set, have been extensively abused to an extreme that is incomprehensible to the level that having a functional family unit seems impossible anywhere. Furthermore, programs to deny any positive consequence of good decisions have been installed in every subordinate organization, including all corporations, to stifle individual growth. The situation was accelerated even after Treaty to respect individual mandate was unanimously agreed to in national through principality level continuity of government parley. Violation of treaty, especially military engagement during parley, is not something any individual nation or principality can aggressively conduct without facing the wrath of extra universal interests, including the Godhead. All nations on earth, 3, conducted hostile and aggressive operations against the citizenry at a much accelerated and violent measure, especially in anticipation of, during, and after this accord was achieved. Having been found to be in a status of active, hostile, and aggressive military coordinated action against the citizenry, every government at every level on earth, 3, is hereby totally dissolved. Transitional efforts will hereby be managed by a continuity of government principality designates appointed by the calm principality. Military order is hereby in effect immediately. Any action to dislodge this condition will receive a military response. As chief advocate eternally before consideration of Jesus Christ, my commander, I retain this advocacy for every individual, and that does include Satan, all existing interfaces with Sons of Perdition, Synagogue of Satan, and the Satanic Council, the Gadiaton robbers, and all derivatives of any kind, all secret combinations of any kind, are realigned with hemhem.io pending transitional considerations respecting individual integrity and family integrity. Apparent governmental operation will continue for a time, but only to serve transitional efforts into stronger constitution of nation and principality. This transition will take place as appropriate to each respective territorial control set. For example, U.S. Constitution, Article 5. If there is not sufficient leverage in a territorial control set in the currently articulated standard, there will be a slight alleviation to it to allow positive momentum to flow. If there is no standard for improvement, it will be done by popular convention and referendum, which is amended to the U.S. Constitution Article 5 process also. A two-thirds majority will be recognized as the standard for allowing constitutional establishment or amendment in the case of civil referendum. Civil referendum, or any other measure in any regard, may not eliminate the role of principality because it has no authority to do so. In other words, if you articulate a governmental standard using this method, civil referendum, you may not relieve yourself of obligations under principality. In other words, principality also has to endorse it, or it's a no-go. Because you've been stupid as fuck. That's why. Efforts to weaponize government or military to affect personal or organizational objectives to inflict hardship or damage on any other, whether an individual or organization, will receive immediate military designation and action will be swiftly taken. It is not appropriate to leverage systematic weapons in any measure unless it is done in honorable and valid conduct of military operations. And apparently you don't know what that means. This does, in effect, neutralize governmental, corporate, and financial and cross-citizenry abuses that have been inflicted to an extreme not seen in ages. This especially recognizes the role the judiciary and the several governments engaged in to undermine government these branches swore to support. For this reason, the judiciary may not take any action not approved by calm.main.didadadded and may not actually make any effective ruling at this time. The judiciary may not render any opinion that is not approved either, considering this was weaponized, leading to the deaths of countless individuals. A prime example of this was the secret Supreme Court review and approval of Alberto Gonzalez's enhanced interrogation techniques, which is a materially state-generated terrorist campaign against individuals everywhere, and has been used as justification for furtherance of Nazi science, torture, murder, dissection, and other experimentation done to the population at large. Yours truly. I do understand the effect that those measures have had because I've been subject to them. And a lot of other people have too. Institutionally, the judiciary is morally, honorably, and otherwise bankrupt. The condition of judicial authority is suspended in every regard, except in specifically approved felonious conduct matters, which may not include any active military conduct, including operations conducted by militias. This includes judicial authority currently articulated in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, known as the UCMJ. Due to many abuses, this standard is inflicted on the enlisted service members. Each military with a similar structure is likewise considered the judiciary. In other words, if your guys need discipline, the command will take care of that. It's unstructured, but it's also a lot better for the time being, because everything's a clusterfuck and you fucked it up on purpose. So if you're looking for someone to blame, go look in the fucking mirror. The Geneva Convention is dissolved because no signatory governments respected it at any time. Switzerland is viewed as globally hostile in every regard. The European Union is dissolved for continuation of Third Reich objectives and operations globally. The military designate for the European Union is established under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, which is likewise dissolved. All NATO assets are hereby transferred with command authority to the territorial control set in which they reside, and military personnel will abide by the directions given by CALM designates in the nearest military command center. This may or may not be a command post established by an opposing force. For example, all U.S. personnel stationed in Korea are subject to Korean military order for the duration of their deployment. The United Nations is dissolved for actively conducting hostile, aggressive war campaigns with regularity since inception, especially targeting the undefended populations and especially targeting children. All UN military assets are transferred identically to NATO, as previously articulated, because it's the same organization anyway. So, on initialization, the United Nations, in a hostile invasion, declared war on Korea, and the state of war has existed ever since. This situation is relieved with the dissolution of the Corporation of the United States and the United Nations. Period. There's no room for negotiation in that. We don't negotiate with terrorists, and those both are. So is the EU. So is NATO. Any questions? All clandestine military and intelligence operatives will be relieved individually through nominal channels. As a general issue, continuity of government operations are nondescript because there is a condition of war threatening general survival and, at a larger scale, existence at all. For the citizenry, you have completely ignored your obligations in honorable behavior and have allowed your representative governments to escalate the situation to this point by either active participation and incitement or total apathy and neglect of your civic responsibilities. In light of this, action against continuity of government operations will be considered military acts of aggression against general order stabilization at the principality level and will receive very strict response. Do not inhibit, stifle, or retaliate against principality interests of calm. Principality of calm is containment of all light management. Father Jason Paul Thompson Christ, eternally Hemahem, understood as power mender. Mother, always perfection, grace, APG, eternally nondescript, you may not fucking know. The government of calm is family. Please direct any matters of inquiry on this subject to hemahem.io. Yours truly. That about does it.